Right now, as you're watching this video, your brain is fighting a war between two ancient systems. One designed to keep you scanning for threats, the other capable of incredible sustained focus. The winner of this internal battle determines whether you live as a scattered leaf in the wind or as an unstoppable force of directed attention. Most people never realize this war is happening. They accept their scattered attention as normal, as inevitable, as just how the mind works. But what if I told you this acceptance is the very thing that keeps superhuman focus forever out of reach? Today, we're going to explore why your brain actively resists the very focus you desperately want, and more importantly, how understanding this resistance becomes the key to transcending it. This isn't about productivity hacks or time management tricks. This is about rewiring the fundamental patterns of how your mind processes reality itself. The philosopher William James once wrote that, "The faculty of voluntarily bringing back a wandering attention is the very root of judgment, character, and will." Yet here we are, over a century later, living in an age where this fundamental human capacity has become almost extinct. Why? Because we've misunderstood what focus actually is. Most people think focus means forcing attention onto something, like holding a flashlight steady on a single spot. But this metaphor reveals exactly why traditional approaches to focus fail. When you force a flashlight to stay in one place, your hand inevitably shakes. The harder you grip, the more it trembles. Focus, true focus, isn't about force at all. Consider Marcus, a software engineer who came to understand this the hard way. For years, he'd sit at his computer, determined to code for hours without distraction. He'd clench his jaw, close all other applications, even unplug his internet. Yet within 20 minutes, his mind would be wandering, his body restless, his productivity plummeting. Marcus was trying to achieve focus through suppression, through brute force control of his attention. He was fighting the war using the wrong weapons entirely. The ancient Stoic philosophers understood something about attention that we've forgotten in our modern rush toward quick fixes. They recognized that the mind, left to its own devices, naturally seeks novelty, scans for potential problems, and jumps between thoughts like a monkey swinging between branches. This isn't a flaw in your design. It's actually a sophisticated survival mechanism that kept your ancestors alive. But here's where it gets fascinating from a cognitive perspective. Your brain has two distinct attention networks that operate like competing generals in this internal war. The first is called the default mode network, your mind's screensaver, constantly running background processes, making associations, planning for the future, reviewing the past. This network activates whenever you're not actively focused on something specific. It's the source of that inner commentary that never seems to stop. The second is the executive attention network, your mind's laser beam, capable of sustained, directed focus that can shut out everything else. When this network is fully engaged, hours can pass like minutes. You enter what psychologists call a flow state, where the boundary between you and your task dissolves entirely. The tragedy is that most people spend their entire lives with the default mode network running the show, never realizing they have access to this second, far more powerful system. It's like owning a Ferrari but only ever driving it in first gear because no one ever taught you about the other gears. But why does the default mode network dominate so completely? The answer lies in a fundamental misunderstanding about how attention actually works. We've been taught to see distraction as the enemy, something to be fought against and overcome. But what if distraction isn't the problem at all? What if the real issue is that we're trying to achieve focus while ignoring the deeper emotional and cognitive patterns that generate distraction in the first place? Think about Sarah, a marketing executive who struggled with focus during important strategy sessions. She'd force herself to pay attention, taking notes furiously, nodding at all the right moments. But her mind kept drifting to an unresolved conflict with her colleague, to her daughter's upcoming school performance, to the presentation she needed to finish by Friday. Sarah assumed she simply had poor willpower, that she needed to try harder to concentrate. But Sarah's wandering mind wasn't random at all. Every distraction served a purpose, either processing unresolved emotional tension or scanning for potential threats to her security and well-being. Her brain was doing exactly what it was designed to do: keep her alive and help her navigate complex social and professional relationships. The issue wasn't that her attention was broken. It was that she was trying to force focus without addressing the underlying concerns that were driving her mental restlessness. This is where cognitive reframing becomes absolutely crucial. Instead of seeing your wandering mind as evidence of weakness or lack of discipline, what if you recognized it as intelligent information? What if every distraction was actually your psyche trying to tell you something important about unprocessed emotions, unmet needs, or unresolved tensions in your life? From this perspective, achieving superhuman focus isn't about overpowering distraction. It's about creating the internal conditions where distraction naturally dissolves. It's about addressing the root causes that generate mental restlessness in the first place. When your emotional landscape is clear, when your deeper needs are acknowledged, when you've processed the anxieties and tensions that normally pull at your attention, something remarkable happens. The default mode network doesn't need to work so hard. The executive attention network can finally take the wheel. The neuroscientist Dr. Judson Brewer discovered something fascinating when he studied the brains of experienced meditators. He found that their default mode networks showed dramatically different patterns than non-meditators. Instead of the constant chatter and jumping between thoughts, their baseline mental state was much quieter, much more stable. They hadn't eliminated the default mode network, they had transformed its quality. This transformation happens through what we might call emotional attention hygiene, the practice of regularly clearing the psychological residue that accumulates throughout your day. Just as you brush your teeth to prevent cavities, you need to process emotions and tensions to prevent attention decay. But here's where most people get stuck. They try to achieve this emotional clarity through more thinking, more analysis, more mental effort. They turn their problems over and over in their minds, believing that if they just think hard enough, they'll solve them and finally be able to focus. This approach is like trying to clean muddy water by stirring it faster. The more you agitate it, the cloudier it becomes. The key insight from both ancient wisdom traditions and modern neuroscience is that emotional clarity comes not through more thinking, but through a different kind of attention altogether. It comes through what mindfulness teachers call choiceless awareness, the ability to observe your mental and emotional processes without immediately trying to fix, change, or improve them. When you can observe your anxiety without becoming anxious about being anxious, when you can notice your frustration without being frustrated about being frustrated, something profound shifts in your relationship to your own mind. The emotional charge that normally pulls your attention away begins to dissipate naturally, like steam rising from hot water. Consider the case of David, a research scientist who discovered this principle almost by accident. For months, he'd been struggling to maintain focus while writing a crucial grant proposal. Every time he sat down to work, His mind would fill with worries about funding, concerns about his career trajectory, doubts about his research approach. The harder he tried to push these thoughts away, the more insistent they became. One afternoon, exhausted from this internal struggle, David simply gave up trying to control his thoughts. Instead of fighting them, he began observing them with the same scientific curiosity he brought to his research. He noticed how anxiety manifested as physical tension in his chest. He observed how doubt created a particular quality of mental restlessness. He watched how frustration generated specific patterns of inner commentary. Something unexpected happened. The more David observed these mental patterns without trying to change them, the less power they seemed to have over him. His anxiety didn't disappear, but it no longer demanded his complete attention. His doubts remained, but they became background noise rather than overwhelming static. Within weeks, David found himself able to focus on his writing for hours at a time, not because he had conquered his emotions, but because he had changed his relationship to them entirely. This is the essence of what we might call emotional jujitsu, using the momentum of your mental and emotional patterns rather than fighting against them. Instead of trying to achieve focus by suppressing distraction, you achieve focus by transforming your relationship to distraction itself. The practical implications of this shift are profound. When you stop seeing your wandering mind as a problem to be solved and start seeing it as information to be processed, your entire approach to focus changes. You begin to work with your brain's natural patterns rather than against them. But let's get even more specific about how this works in practice. The first strategy involves what cognitive scientists call meta-attention, attention to attention itself. Most people are completely unconscious of how their attention moves throughout the day. They're like sleepwalkers, drifting from distraction to distraction without any awareness of the transition. Developing meta-attention means becoming aware of awareness itself. When you notice your mind has wandered during a conversation, instead of immediately snapping back to focus, pause for just a moment and observe the wandering. Where did your attention go? What pulled it away? Was there an emotion driving the distraction? An unmet need? An unprocessed concern? This moment of observation, lasting just a few seconds, begins to create what psychologists call cognitive space between you and your mental processes. You start to realize that you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, you are not your wandering mind. You are the awareness that can observe all of these things. And from this place of aware observation, genuine focus becomes not just possible, but natural. The second strategy involves understanding the rhythm of attention itself. Your brain's capacity for sustained focus isn't constant throughout the day. It follows natural cycles that most people completely ignore. Research shows that our attention naturally peaks and valleys in roughly 90-minute cycles, similar to the sleep cycles that occur at night. Instead of fighting these natural rhythms, superhuman focus emerges when you learn to work with them. During peak attention periods, you tackle your most demanding cognitive work. During valley periods, you process emotions, clear mental clutter, or engage in what researchers call constructive mind wandering, allowing your default mode network to make creative connections and process background concerns. Think of it like surfing rather than swimming. A swimmer fights against the waves, exhausting themselves in the struggle. A surfer reads the patterns of the ocean and uses the wave's own energy to move forward. When you learn to read the patterns of your own attention, you can ride its natural rhythms toward sustained focus rather than fighting against them. The third strategy addresses what might be the deepest obstacle to superhuman focus: the unconscious belief that you don't deserve it. This might sound psychological rather than practical, but bear with me, because this insight could change everything about your relationship to concentration. Most people harbor a subtle but persistent belief that sustained focus, that flow state, that zone of effortless concentration is somehow reserved for other people, for geniuses, for the naturally gifted, for those who were born with better brains. This belief operates below the threshold of conscious awareness, but it profoundly shapes how you approach focus itself. When you unconsciously believe you don't deserve sustained attention, you sabotage your own efforts before they can take hold. You start a focused work session, then unconsciously create distractions to prove to yourself that sustained focus isn't really possible for someone like you. You reach for your phone, you remember an urgent email, you suddenly feel hungry or tired or restless. Breaking through this unconscious self-sabotage requires what we might call attention activism, the radical act of claiming your birthright to sustained focus. This means recognizing that the capacity for superhuman attention isn't a gift granted to a select few. It's a fundamental human capacity that every healthy brain possesses. The neuroscience is clear on this point. Barring specific attention disorders, every human brain comes equipped with the same basic attention networks. The differences in focus ability that we observe between people aren't due to hardware differences. They're due to software patterns, to learned habits of attention that can be unlearned and reprogrammed. When you truly internalize this truth, that superhuman focus is your natural birthright rather than an impossible goal, something shifts at the deepest level of your psyche. You stop approaching focus as a desperate attempt to fix something broken in yourself, and you start approaching it as a natural expression of your cognitive potential. The fourth strategy involves what ancient philosophers called single pointing, but which modern science understands as attention consolidation. Most people scatter their attention across multiple objects simultaneously. They're thinking about their work while checking their phone, while listening to music, while planning their evening. This divided attention creates what neuroscientists call cognitive residue, mental energy that gets stuck in task-switching overhead. Superhuman focus emerges when you learn to consolidate your attention fully onto a single point of focus. But here's the crucial insight. This consolidation happens not through force, but through what we might call voluntary surrender. Instead of trying to grab focus and hold it like a wrestling match, you learn to offer your attention completely to whatever you've chosen to focus on. This is similar to how a master archer doesn't try to force the arrow to hit the target. Instead, they align their body, their breath, their intention, and then release the arrow with complete trust in the process. The arrow finds the target not through force, but through the natural outcome of proper alignment and release. When you offer your attention completely to your chosen focus, whether it's a work project, a conversation, or even a simple task like washing dishes, you create the conditions for what psychologists call effortless concentration. Your mind stops fighting itself and settles into a natural state of absorbed engagement. The fifth and perhaps most counterintuitive strategy involves embracing what might seem like the opposite of focus: strategic mind wandering. Remember, your default mode network isn't your enemy. It's an incredibly sophisticated cognitive system that processes emotions, makes creative connections, and helps you navigate complex life situations. The problem isn't that your mind wanders, it's that it wanders unconsciously, pulling you away from chosen focuses at inappropriate times. But when you create structured time for conscious mind wandering, something remarkable happens. Your default mode network gets to do its important work without hijacking your focused attention during crucial moments. This might involve setting aside 15 minutes each morning to simply sit and let your mind go wherever it wants to go. No agenda, no problem solving, no trying to be productive. Just conscious space for your psyche to process whatever needs processing. When your default mode network knows it will get its time, it becomes much less likely to interrupt your focused work sessions. Professional athletes have understood this principle for decades. They know that peak performance isn't about constant intensity. It's about the rhythm between focused effort and conscious recovery. Your attention works the same way. Superhuman focus isn't about never letting your mind wander. It's about choosing when to focus and when to let your attention rest and restore itself. But perhaps the deepest insight about superhuman focus comes from understanding its ultimate purpose. Why do you want to develop this capacity in the first place? Is it just to be more productive, to get more done, to achieve better outcomes? Or is there something deeper calling you toward sustained attention? The contemplative traditions suggest that the deepest purpose of developing sustained focus isn't external achievement. It's the intrinsic joy of being fully present to life itself. When your attention is scattered, you miss the subtle textures of experience that make life rich and meaningful. You eat without tasting, you listen without hearing, you live without fully experiencing the miracle of consciousness itself. Superhuman focus, from this perspective, isn't just a cognitive skill. It's a way of honoring the precious gift of awareness that you've been given. It's a form of reverence for the mystery of being conscious in an unconscious universe. When you approach focus development from this deeper motivation, not just as a means to an end, but as an end in itself, something profound shifts in your relationship to attention. You stop trying to use focus to get somewhere else, and you start enjoying focus as a way of being fully present to wherever you are. This shift in motivation transforms the entire quality of your attention. Instead of effortful concentration driven by external goals, you discover what the mystics call effortless attention, focus that emerges naturally from genuine interest and presence rather than willful determination. Consider Rachel, a therapist who made this transition from goal-driven focus to presence-based attention. For years, she had struggled to maintain focus during client sessions, her mind often wandering to her next appointment, her administrative tasks, her personal concerns. She tried various concentration techniques, but they all felt effortful and unsustainable. The breakthrough came when Rachel stopped trying to focus in order to be a better therapist and started focusing as a way of offering complete presence to her clients. She realized that her clients deserved nothing less than her full attention, not as a professional technique, but as a basic form of human respect and care. This shift in motivation transformed everything. Rachel's attention naturally consolidated around her clients because she genuinely cared about being fully present with them. Her mind stopped wandering because she was no longer trying to use focus for her own benefit. She was offering it as a gift to another human being. This brings us to perhaps the most important insight about superhuman focus. It's not ultimately about you at all. The highest levels of sustained attention emerge when you transcend the self-centered motivation of personal improvement and discover focus as a form of service. Service to your work, service to others, service to the larger purposes that give your life meaning. When your focus serves something greater than your own personal agenda, it stops being a struggle and becomes a natural expression of care. You're no longer trying to grab and hold attention. You're offering it freely to whatever deserves your complete presence. This is why parents can focus intensely when their child needs them, why artists can work for hours when inspired by their creative vision, why scientists can concentrate deeply when pursuing questions that genuinely fascinate them. The focus isn't driven by willpower. It's pulled forward by purpose, by care, by genuine engagement with something meaningful. So here's the real secret of superhuman focus that most people never discover. It's not about developing stronger concentration through mental training exercises. It's about discovering what genuinely matters to you so deeply that giving it your complete attention becomes not a discipline, but a joy. When you find work that engages your deepest values, relationships that call forth your most authentic self, creative expressions that connect you to something larger than your individual concerns, focus stops being a problem and becomes a natural outcome. You don't have to force your attention because your attention wants to be there. This doesn't mean you'll never face distraction or mental restlessness again. It means you'll have a fundamentally different relationship to these challenges. Instead of seeing them as evidence that you're broken or undisciplined, you'll see them as information about what needs attention in your inner landscape. Your wandering mind becomes a compass pointing toward unprocessed emotions, unmet needs, unresolved tensions that require your care. Your restlessness becomes a signal that you may be trying to focus on something that doesn't genuinely engage your deeper purposes. Your distractibility becomes feedback about the alignment between your attention and your authentic values. From this perspective, developing superhuman focus isn't about overcoming your humanity. It's about expressing your humanity more fully. It's about honoring both your need for focused achievement and your need for emotional processing, creative wandering, and meaningful rest. The brain you have right now, reading these words, already contains all the neural circuitry necessary for sustained, superhuman focus. The question isn't whether you have the capacity, you do. The question is whether you're willing to do the inner work necessary to clear the emotional and psychological obstacles that keep this capacity hidden. This inner work isn't dramatic or complicated. It's the simple, daily practice of treating your attention as sacred, of processing emotions before they accumulate into mental static, of aligning your focus with purposes that genuinely matter to you, of creating rhythm between concentrated effort and conscious rest. Most people will never tap into their superhuman focus because they're looking for it in the wrong places. They're trying to find it through techniques and systems and external methods, when it can only be found through a deeper relationship with their own consciousness. But you don't have to be most people. You have the capacity right now to begin treating your attention as the precious resource it is. You can start processing the emotions that create mental restlessness. You can begin aligning your focus with purposes that genuinely inspire you. You can create the conditions where sustained attention becomes not a struggle, but a natural expression of who you truly are. The war between your scattered and focused attention doesn't have to rage forever. There can be peace in your inner landscape. There can be the quiet joy of sustained presence. There can be the profound satisfaction of giving your complete attention to whatever life is asking of you in this moment. The capacity for superhuman focus isn't reserved for a gifted few. It's your birthright as a conscious being in an endlessly fascinating universe. The only question is whether you're ready to claim it. Remember to subscribe for more insights into mastering your mind and transforming your relationship with consciousness itself. In our next video, we'll explore how to break free from the productivity myths that actually make you less effective. Until then, treat your attention like the sacred gift it is.